My name is Matt Howard. I was also a Marine in the 1st Tank Battalion, 1st Division, 1st Marine Division, stationed in 29 Palms, California. You know, this is really interesting. I've been out of the Marine Corps for 2 years. I haven't thought about hazing in, I can't even tell you when. And just listening to that testimony brought back many a painful memory. I can corroborate everything that this Lance Corporal just said. The Marine Corps bases itself on dehumanization and subjugation and abuse of its lower enlisted in order for it to function. And I myself, while I certainly didn't plan on testifying about this, I was also a victim of this. During boot camp, I was beaten, experienced what the Marines call a blanket party. Anyone who's watched Full Metal Jacket gets the idea. After the incident, I was severely injured and ended up being kicked out of my platoon for being beaten. Also, a very dear friend of mine, Shane Swanberg, was hazed. He was a tow gunner in 1st Tank Battalion. He was the victim of a severe hazing incident, which he reported and faced more retribution for reporting. So at that time, he was transferred to the battalion office so he could have a desk job and be away from his platoon. During that time, he had decided he had enough, and he started smoking marijuana and informed his chain of command of that fact in an attempt to remove himself from the situation he found himself in. Some cruel twist of fate, cruel irony, karma, I don't know what you want to call it, his drug test actually came back negative. Yeah, well, smoking marijuana would have saved his life, because then he went to Ramadi and was killed by indirect mortar fire. Anyway. Spearhead, pushing all the way to Baghdad. As we were lined up on the border between Iraq and Kuwait, in the first hours of the invasion, before the first hours of the invasion, I was in my 7-ton vehicle, monitoring the battalion net, listening to the radio. At that time, my friend, Corporal Cameron White, came running to my truck. My radio actually wasn't working at the time. I was actually lucky to have a radio. There were many vehicles in my convoy that were not equipped with radios. The radio I was equipped with was outdated. It frequently became inoperable. At that time, that moment was one of those times. So Corporal White came up and started screaming, "Hey man, you got to hear what's going on the radio. They're screaming, cease fire, cease fire. Somebody just got hit." And I didn't know what to think. As a couple minutes passed, word came down, Captain Banning of Alpha Company, the first tank of the invasion that crossed the line of departure, he was having some technical issues on his tank, and I believe they had actually forgot to put in their night vision in the driver's hole. And at that time, they went to traverse the main gun turret of the M1A1 tank So now the tank, the main gun tube, is actually facing Kuwait. At this time, a Marine gunship came up overhead and launched a Hellfire missile directly into the tank. Miraculously, everyone actually survived. The forward observer on the tank received shrapnel to his eye, but aside from that, everyone did make it off the tank alive. Now, this is quite fearful for myself. I had just got done reading a book, I believe it was called The General's War, which goes into great detail the planning and operation of the first Gulf War. And in that book, it was clearly laid out how the majority of all casualties in the first Gulf War were from friendly fire. There I was, not even over the border yet, captain of my company, first tank of the invasion, was blown up by his own Marines. Now, I actually tell this story not to point out the ineptness of the United States Marine Corps. I actually use it as a segue to talk about the munitions that we used in Tank Battalion, and also in Marine Corps gunships and many other weapon systems as well. Contained in that Hellfire missile was depleted uranium. Contained in the armor of that M1A1 tank was depleted uranium. Maximum exposure time for depleted uranium, or when you're most susceptible to exposure, is directly after impact. You should not be in the vicinity of a vehicle that was just hit by friendly fire. I certainly don't have a science background. I won't get into the issue of depleted uranium too much. I expect you to do that and do the research. But I can speak briefly to the fact that this is the Agent Orange of this occupation.